with a coloring book when you were a kid that was connecting the dots, and then you would get all those dots connected and end up with a real pretty picture, but they were all numbered. What would you do if there were no numbers next to the dots? How would you connect them? How would you make a pretty picture? What if there was a dot missing? This is the story that I talk about, connecting the dots of a disconnected life. Because my life was a series of dots that were totally disconnected and made no sense. It was confusing to me. It must have been really confusing to my friends. I mean, let's look at it this way. My birth name was Deborah Elizabeth Shapiro. In Hebrew, that's Devorah Elisheva. But then when I got married, I became Deborah Hemstreet. But I kept the Shapiro with my middle name, so it was Deborah Elizabeth Shapiro Hemstreet. But then my mother called me Debbie Beth, and my cousin who didn't like me called me DB for dirtbag. Then there was Mary Ruth, the name I didn't get because my father's mother had that name, and the story goes on. Well, I grew up in a dysfunctional Christian family, and the dream of my heart was to go to China. My father was a Jewish believer in Jesus, and as I got older, somehow I found myself in Israel. And in Israel, I got involved in ministry to Chinese students, teaching English using the Bible as a textbook. And I looked successful, but in the background, there were the disconnects, the holes in my memory, the inability to put it all together. And I might have looked great and wonderful on the outside, but inside I was falling apart. This is a story actually with two plots. The one plot is me and some of the really crazy decisions I made, and you can ask some of my friends, they were weird. And then there's this big God outside of me who amazingly guided me in a path to find hope and victory, to the point where all of those disconnects got together, and I eventually met the man that I wanted to marry at the age of 53. And 3 years later, the Lord took him home. And then I had to go through that grief, and after having been in Israel from 1982 to 2007, I gave everything up to be with him. He died in 2010, and in 2011, I went back to Israel. And God restored the ministry to the Chinese there. This is a story not to give you 10 steps to hope and victory, but to tell you that there is a God who will work with you even through your stupid decisions and mistakes. And that if you will just trust Him, trust in your Savior, if you will make that choice every day, He will connect the dots and you will end up with a picture more beautiful than you ever would have dreamed. Connecting the Dots of a Disconnected Life by Devorah Elisheva.